You know that person you can't stop thinking about? The one who left months ago, maybe even years ago, but somehow still lives rent-free in your head? Yeah, that one. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear about why you can't let them go. Look, I'm not here to give you some surface-level advice about moving on. We're going way deeper than that, because the real reason you're stuck isn't what you think it is. So here's what we're doing today. We're breaking down exactly why letting someone go feels completely impossible, using insights from Alan Watts, the philosopher who understood human attachment better than most therapists ever will. And by the end of this, you're going to understand something about yourself that changes everything. Let's start with the obvious question. Why does it hurt so much to let someone go? I mean, think about it. You've lost jobs before. You've moved away from cities. You've said goodbye to friends. But this is different. This person has a grip on you that feels almost physical. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think the pain comes from losing the person. But Alan Watts would tell you something that sounds crazy at first. The pain doesn't come from losing them. The pain comes from how tightly you're holding on to the memory of them. See, there's this thing Watts talked about all the time. He said we confuse grasping with loving. We think if we love someone, we need to hold them, keep them, own them in some way. And when they're gone, we keep doing that same grasping motion, but now we're just grabbing at air. And that grasping, that constant reaching for something that isn't there anymore, that's what's killing you. Think about it like this. Imagine you're holding sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you hold your hand open, the sand just sits there. Relationships are like that. Life is like that. The more desperately you try to hold on, the more you lose. But here's the thing that makes this even harder. You're not just holding on to the person. You're holding on to a version of yourself that existed when you were with them. And that's the part nobody talks about. When you were with this person, you had an identity. You were someone's partner, someone's lover, someone's person. And when they left, they didn't just take themselves. They took that version of you. And now you're walking around feeling like half a person, trying to figure out who you are without them. Alan Watts had this brilliant way of explaining it. He said we create these mental images of ourselves, these ideas of who we are, and then we spend all our energy trying to maintain those images. But those images aren't real. They're just thoughts, stories we tell ourselves. So when someone leaves, we're not just mourning them. We're mourning the story we had about ourselves. We're mourning the future we planned. We're mourning the identity we built around being with them. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Ready? You might not actually miss them. You might miss the idea of them. You might miss who you were when you were with them. You might miss the comfort of having someone, anyone, rather than that specific person. I know that sounds harsh, but stay with me here because this is important. Watts talked about something he called the illusion of the separate self. He said we walk around thinking we're these isolated individuals, completely separate from everything else. And because we feel separate, we feel incomplete, like we need someone else to make us whole. So we meet someone, and suddenly that feeling of incompleteness goes away for a while. We feel complete, whole, happy. But here's the trick. That wholeness was always there. It was never about the other person. They just distracted you from your own feeling of separation for a while. And when they leave, boom, that feeling of being incomplete comes rushing back. But now it's 10 times worse because you've convinced yourself that they were the solution, that they were the missing piece. And without them, you'll never be whole again. Except that was never true in the first place. Think about this. Before you met them, you existed. You were a complete human being. You had thoughts, feelings, experiences. You were whole. Then you met them, and you convinced yourself you needed them. And now they're gone, and you've convinced yourself you can't survive without them. But you were whole before. You'll be whole again. The only thing standing in your way is this story you keep telling yourself about needing them. Now, let's talk about why our brains make this so hard. Because there's actual science behind this, and understanding it helps. When you're in a relationship, your brain releases all these chemicals. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. You get addicted to those feelings. And when the person leaves, your brain goes through withdrawal. Actual physical withdrawal. Like you're coming off a drug. So when people say getting over someone is like breaking an addiction, they're not exaggerating. Your brain literally formed neural pathways around this person. Every time you thought about them, talked to them, touched them, those pathways got stronger. And now you're trying to rewire your entire brain while it's screaming at you to just go back to what feels familiar. That's why you keep checking their social media. That's why you replay old conversations in your head. That's why you imagine scenarios where they come back. Your brain is trying to get its fix. But here's what Alan Watts would say about this. He'd say you're suffering because you're resisting what is. You're fighting against reality. And reality doesn't care about your resistance. It just is. The relationship ended. That's a fact. But you're spending all your energy arguing with that fact. Wishing it was different. Believing it shouldn't have happened. Thinking about all the ways it could have worked out. And that resistance, that fight against what is, that's where all your pain lives. Watts had this beautiful line. He said, "Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone." Think about that. When water is muddy, if you keep stirring it, it stays muddy. But if you just let it be, it settles on its own. Your mind is the same way. Every time you replay what happened, every time you analyze what went wrong, every time you imagine what you could have done differently, you're stirring the water, and it stays muddy, confused, painful. But what if you just stop stirring? What if you just let it be? Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds great in theory, but how? How do you just let something be when it hurts this much? And this is where we get into the really practical stuff. Because understanding the philosophy is one thing, but actually applying it is another. First, you need to understand that letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean the person didn't matter. It doesn't mean pretending the relationship never happened. Letting go just means accepting that it's over. That's it. You're not erasing them from your history. You're just accepting that they're not in your present or your future. And acceptance doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you wanted it to happen. It just means you stop fighting against the reality of it. Think of it like this. If it's raining outside, you can stand there screaming at the sky, shaking your fist, demanding it stop. Or you can just accept that it's raining and grab an umbrella. The rain doesn't care either way. But one approach causes way less suffering. The relationship ended. That's the rain. You can keep screaming at it. Or you can accept it and figure out how to move forward. Now, here's the part that's going to sound counterintuitive. To let someone go, you actually need to let yourself feel everything. All the pain, all the anger, all the sadness. You need to stop running from it. Because here's what most people do. They try to distract themselves. They jump into new relationships. They work all the time. They stay busy. They do anything to avoid feeling the pain. And Alan Watts would tell you that's exactly backwards. He said, the only way out is through. You can't go around the pain. You can't go over it or under it. You have to go through it. You have to feel it completely. But here's the key. You don't get lost in it. You observe it. Like you're watching a storm pass through. You notice the feelings. You let them be there. But you don't create stories about them. You don't make them mean something about your future or your worth. You just feel them. That's it. And this is hard because we're taught to avoid pain at all costs. We're taught that negative emotions are bad and we should get rid of them as fast as possible. But Watts would say that's the problem. By trying to avoid pain, we create more suffering. Pain is just pain. It's a sensation. It comes, it peaks, it passes. But suffering is what happens when we resist the pain. When we tell ourselves stories about the pain. When we believe the pain means something terrible about us or our future. So here's what you do. Next time you feel that wave of missing them, don't run from it. Don't distract yourself. Just sit with it. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice what thoughts come up. But don't grab onto those thoughts. Just let them pass like clouds in the sky. And here's what you'll discover. The feeling doesn't last as long as you think it will. It comes, it peaks, and then it starts to fade. And each time you do this, each time you let yourself feel it without resistance, it gets a little easier. Now let's talk about attachment. Because this is really the heart of everything. Alan Watts drew a lot from Buddhist philosophy. And in Buddhism, They talk about attachment as the root of all suffering. And attachment doesn't mean love. It doesn't mean connection. Attachment means clinging, grasping, needing something to be a certain way in order for you to be okay. So when you're attached to someone, you're not just loving them. You're depending on them for your sense of self, your happiness, your worth. And that's a problem because people change. People leave. Life is constantly moving and shifting. And when you're attached, you suffer every time things don't go your way. What said this amazing thing? He said, "You are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago." And that goes for everyone. Your ex isn't the same person they were when you met them. You're not the same person either. And trying to hold on to who they were or who you were is like trying to hold on to a river. It just keeps flowing. So what's the alternative to attachment? Non-attachment. And no, that doesn't mean not caring. It doesn't mean being cold or distant. Non-attachment means loving without clinging, appreciating without owning, being present without demanding that things stay the same. Think about how you appreciate a sunset. You watch it. You enjoy it. You feel something when you see it. But you don't try to hold on to it. You don't get upset when it's over. You just enjoy it while it was there, and then you let it go. That's not attachment. And that's how What's would say we should relate to everything in life, including people. But our culture teaches us the opposite. We're taught that love means possession. That if you really love someone, you need them. You can't live without them. And that sets us up for so much pain. Because when you need someone, you're not free. And neither are they. You're both trapped in this dynamic where your happiness depends on the other person staying and being a certain way. And that's not love. That's dependency. Real love, the kind what's talked about, is free. It says, "I love you, and I want you to be happy, even if that means being without me." It says, "I appreciate you while you're here, and I'll appreciate the time we had when you're gone." That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when someone leaves. It hurts because you care, but the hurt is clean. It's not mixed up with all this resistance and clinging and needing things to be different. So how do you develop this kind of non-attachment? How do you love without clinging? It starts with understanding who you really are. And this is where what gets really interesting. He said most of us are living with a false sense of self. We think we're this separate, isolated person inside our head. And because we feel separate, we feel like we need other people to complete us. But that feeling of separation is an illusion. At the deepest level, you're not separate from anything. You're connected to everything. You're part of the same energy, the same consciousness, the same life force that's in everyone and everything. And when you really understand that, you stop feeling incomplete. Now, I know that sounds super abstract, so let me break it down. Think about your body. You've got trillions of cells, all working together. Each cell is doing its own thing, but they're all part of you. Now zoom out. You're one person in a family, one person in a community, one person on a planet with billions of other people. And all of us are connected through this incredible web of relationships and interactions and shared history. You're not as separate as you think. And when you really get that, when you really feel it, you stop needing someone else to make you feel whole. You realize you were always whole, always complete, always enough. And from that place, you can love people without clinging to them. You can appreciate them without needing them. You can let them go without falling apart. But getting to that place takes work. It takes practice. And it takes honesty. You have to be honest about why you're really holding on. Is it because you genuinely love this person and want them back? Or is it because you're afraid of being alone? Is it because you miss them? Or because you miss not having to feel your own pain? Is it because they were special? Or because anyone was better than no one? These are hard questions, but you need to ask them. Because if you're holding on for the wrong reasons, you're not honoring yourself for them. And here's another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes we hold on because we're afraid of admitting we made a mistake. We invested so much time, so much energy, so much of ourselves into this relationship, and letting go feels like admitting it was all for nothing. But What's would say that's backwards thinking. Nothing in life is wasted. Every experience teaches you something. Every relationship shows you something about yourself, even the painful ones. especially the painful ones. So the relationship ended. That doesn't mean it was a mistake. It means it ran its course. It served its purpose. And now it's time for something new. But you can't get to something new while you're still clinging to something old. You can't plant new seeds in soil that's already full. You need to clear the ground first. And clearing the ground means grieving. Actually grieving. Not distracting yourself. Not staying busy. Not pretending you're fine. Actually feeling the loss and letting yourself be sad about it. Because grief is just love with nowhere to go. And when you let yourself grieve, when you let yourself feel that love and that sadness completely, something shifts. The intensity starts to fade. The memories become less painful. And eventually, you can think about the person without that crushing feeling in your chest. But you can't rush this process. You can't force it. You just have to let it happen in its own time. And while you're going through it, you need to be gentle with yourself. Because our culture is terrible at dealing with heartbreak. People will tell you to get over it. Move on. They'll give you timelines. Like you should be fine after 3 months or 6 months. But that's nonsense. Everyone heals at their own pace. And there's no right way to do it. Some days you'll feel great. Some days you'll feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. That's part of the process. Watts talked about this idea of the wisdom of insecurity. He said we spend our whole lives trying to feel secure, trying to control things, trying to make everything safe and predictable. But life isn't safe or predictable. Life is uncertain. And the sooner you accept that, the freer you become. So you can't control when you'll feel better. You can't control whether your ex comes back. You can't control how the story ends. And that's scary. But it's also liberating. Because once you stop trying to control everything, you can just be present with what is. And what is right now is that you're hurting. You're missing someone. You're going through one of the hardest things humans go through. And that's okay. You don't need to fix it or rush it or make it go away. You just need to be with it. Now, let's talk about what happens on the other side of this. Because there's another side. When you finally let go, really let go, something amazing happens. You get yourself back. Not the version of yourself that existed in that relationship. The real you. The you that exists independent of anyone else. And that version of you is stronger than you remember. More capable. More resilient. Because you've been through something hard and you survived. You prove to yourself that you can lose someone and still be okay. And from that place, you can build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else. A life that's full and rich and meaningful all on its own. And then, if someone else comes along, they're not filling a hole. They're just adding to something that's already complete. That's the difference between need and choice. When you need someone, you're coming from lack. When you choose someone, you're coming from wholeness. And that's the kind of relationship Watts would say is actually worth having. One where two whole people come together, not because they need each other, but because they genuinely enjoy being together. Where there's no clinging, no grasping, just presence and appreciation. But you can't get there while you're still holding on to someone who's gone. You have to let go first. You have to find your own wholeness first. And I'm not going to lie to you. This is hard. This is some of the hardest work you'll ever do. Because it requires you to face everything you've been avoiding. All the pain, all the fear, all the stories you tell yourself about not being enough. But on the other side of that work is freedom. Real freedom. The freedom to be yourself without apology. The freedom to love without fear. The freedom to live without constantly looking back. Alan Watts spent his whole life teaching people how to be free. And the core of his message was always the same. Stop grasping. Stop clinging. Stop trying to hold on to things that are constantly changing. Just be present. Just be here now. Just accept what is. And when you apply that to letting someone go, it means accepting that they're gone. Accepting that it hurts. Accepting that you're going to feel sad and angry and confused. But also accepting that you'll get through it. That you're strong enough. That you're whole enough. That you're enough, period. Because you are. You always were. You just forgot for a while. And maybe that person reminded you of your own worth. Maybe being with them made you feel alive and valuable and seen. But here's the thing. That worth was always in you. They just reflected it back to you for a while. And now you need to learn to see it yourself. Without someone else's validation. Without someone else's love. Just you. Recognizing your own value. Your own completeness. Your own enoughness. That's the real work. That's the real challenge. Not getting them back. Not finding someone new. But finding yourself. The self that exists beneath all the stories and all the pain and all the attachment. And when you find that self, you'll realize something incredible. You'll realize that you never actually lost anything. Because you can't lose something that was always within you. You can't lose your own wholeness. You can only forget it for a while. So maybe letting someone go isn't about loss at all. Maybe it's about remembering. Remembering who you were before them. Remembering who you are beneath all the attachment and need and fear. Remembering that you're whole, complete, and enough, exactly as you are. And from that place of remembering, you can finally let go. Not because you don't care. Not because they didn't matter. But because you understand that holding on isn't love. Holding on is fear. And you're ready to choose love over fear. Love for yourself. Love for your own journey. Love for what comes next. Because something will come next. Life keeps moving. You keep moving. And when you stop clinging to what was, you create space for what will be. And maybe what will be is better than anything you can imagine right now. Maybe it's a version of yourself you've never met. Maybe it's experiences you never thought possible. Maybe it's a kind of freedom you didn't know existed. But you'll never know until you let go. Until you open your hand and let the sand fall. Until you stop grasping and start trusting. Trusting yourself. Trusting life. Trusting that you'll be okay, no matter what happens. Because you will be. You are. Right now. Even in the middle of this pain, you're okay. You're breathing. You're here. You're alive. And that's enough. That's always been enough. So stop fighting. Stop resisting. Stop trying to control something that's already done. Just let it be. Let them be. Let yourself be. And see what happens when you finally, truly, completely let go. Hit subscribe if this helped you see things differently.